Boldwood presents Just Date and See, written by Portia MacIntosh and read by Karen Cass. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. The house I grew up in is full of ghosts. Well, not ghosts. I've seen plenty of scary things in my 32 years on this planet, but none of them supernatural, I don't think. You know what I'm talking about, right? The lingering things that trigger memories, things that, to the untrained eye, don't seem like things at all. In the kitchen pantry, on the inside edge of the doorframe, there are the markings Mum used to make to document mine and my sister's heights as we were growing up. To a stranger, these markings must seem pretty straightforward, but when I look at them, I remember how competitive Jess, my younger sister, and I used to be. Bizarrely, we always strove to be the shorter sibling, so when the time came for Mum to check our heights, we would always try to find ways to make ourselves appear smaller. It doesn't make much sense to me now, although, funnily enough, Jess does still love to shrink away from things. Take today, for example. Emptying Mum's house, a large detached in the heart of picture-perfect suburbia, is a huge job. You would think my only sibling would be here to help, but she's MIA. I could give Jess the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps she's not here because it's a difficult thing to do, taking all of Mum's things out of the house that she lived in before either of us were born, loading them into the van that's going to take them away. Perhaps that's why she isn't here. Of course, it's equally likely Jess hasn't turned up because she's had a better offer. Either way, she should be here. It's not fair to leave this all for me to do. I'm currently emptying the fridge and the freezer out into black bags. Bloody hell, there's a jar of Branston pickle in the back of the fridge that looks like it's been there since I sat my A-levels. I'd imagine she got it for Dad, back when he was still around. It's been a long time since he lived in this house, and even he is managing to find a way to linger. With everything bagged up, apart from the single white chocolate magnum I found, I drag the bags out into the back garden and place them in the wheelie bin. I unwrap my ice cream and take an enthusiastic bite. It's December, and chilly outside today. It's cold inside too, given that there's no heating on and all the doors are open. Either way, it's a bit cold for ice cream, but I'm starting to feel hungry from all the hard work, plus I can't quite bring myself to throw chocolate in the bin. There are a few things I'm keeping, not just chocolate. I'm taking some sentimental things from my old room home with me, as well as an impressive collection of board games amassed over the years, and an old Nintendo Wii that would otherwise end up on a scrap heap somewhere. It's amazing how it hasn't worn as well as the edition of Monopoly that Mum and Dad had before I was even born. But I'll see if I can get it working one day when I'm bored, perhaps. "Hello, Billie," I hear an unfortunately familiar voice call out. Now there's something I'm glad to be leaving behind. I'm so close to the back door, I could probably ignore him, save myself from one last encounter with everyone's least favourite neighbour if I just pick up the pace. "Oi, Billie," he says, his voice much louder this time. I may as well get it over with. After today, I'm never going to see him again. "Hello, Mr. Baxter," I say, trying to mask a sigh. Elliot Baxter has been a pain in the arse for pretty much as long as I can remember. He's our 70-something neighbour from up the street, except because the road curves around, it means that his back garden backs onto ours. I thought sharing a garden with him was stressful. I can't even imagine what it must be like to be next door to him. Elliot just loves to complain. It's his all-time favourite thing, whether it's because his neighbour's dog does its business too close to the boundary fence, or the kid with the especially noisy bike chain who rides past his house. Elliot always has a problem, and when Elliot has a problem, the whole street knows about it. "What's up?" I ask him, hoping he makes this quick. I'm really not in the mood. "Finally sold the house," he says. I can't tell if he's making a statement or asking a question, but I know it's probably the former. There's no way he doesn't know. He makes it his business to know other people's business, and let me tell you, it's a full-time job that he works hard at. "Yep," I reply. The less I say, the less he has to work with. "New people moving in?" he asks. "I would imagine so," I say, although, that is typically the idea when someone buys a house. The new people," he starts. I raise my eyebrows expectantly, bracing myself for whatever Elliot is about to say next. He always has the same look on his face. He looks as though he's just been slapped, but he doesn't understand why. "What are the new people like?" he eventually asks. "Oh, I don't know them," I reply. "But what are—" "I'm really sorry. I need to go help the removal men," I insist. "All the best, Mr. Baxter." Honestly, if that's the last time I ever have to speak to him, then it's not all bad news today. I don't give Elliot a chance to reply. I hurry indoors and up the stairs where I find one of the removal men in my old room. It's strange, seeing it being emptied, my memories slowly being stripped away, resetting the room for the next person who will occupy it. With every item that is removed, it's like I hardly recognize it. It isn't only my things that are being removed, it's me. "You all right, love?" he asks as he stacks boxes. Inside those cardboard boxes are all the memories from my childhood attached to various items. The good memories, the bad. Speaking of which, the removal man has just revealed an ugly one by rolling up the rug that used to be next to my bed. I stare down at the ding in the wooden floor. Another ghost. It catches the removal man's eye. "Oh, God, I remember that happening like it was yesterday," I tell him. "There's only a year or so between me and my sister. Anything I got before her, or anything I had that she didn't want until she saw me with it, made her so jealous. On this occasion in particular, it was my rainbow-coloured Beanie Baby rabbit that she decided she had to have, after previously mocking me for having such a childish toy. I don't remember how old I was, but we were still quite young. It all happened so quickly. I was lying on my bed when she came in and decided she was taking a toy from me, I explain, grabbing a small box, heading downstairs with the removal man. He does genuinely seem interested in what happened, unless he's just being polite. She tried to grab it from me, something she often did when she wanted something, and sometimes I let her, but there was no way I was going to give it up that day, so I kept tight hold of it. I don't remember how long we struggled with it. Probably not that long, although it felt like an epic battle at the time. Eventually, when she couldn't hold on any longer, she let go, sending me back with a force that knocked the lamp off my bedside table. My sister scarpered as soon as she realised something might be broken. I averted my eyes, too terrified to look, terrified that the bedside lamp I've had for as long as I could remember, one that was my mum's when she was a young girl, was broken. And I could have cried with relief when, unbelievably, I finally looked down and it was absolutely fine. The floor, however, was not. "That's siblings for you," the man says through a smile. "You'd never think she was the type, talking to her now." "My sister? What, is she here?" I ask, surprised. "Yeah, she's down at the van with Tommy," he replies. "Although they're flirting up a storm, that's why Muggins here is doing all the work." "Well, that does sound like her," I say with a laugh. My smile quickly falls as we reach the front door. "That rug has been hiding that mark on the floor for maybe 20 years, I muse. The day I dragged it across the floor, supposedly as a temporary fix while I figured out what I was going to do about it, marked the start of this fear that Mum would find out. Eventually I would forget it was there, being reminded of it less often, no longer feeling that guilty burn in my feet when I would get in and out of bed each night. I hadn't thought about it in years and years until you uncovered it today, and it's just hit me. Mum is never going to know. She's never going to discover it. It weighed so heavy on my mind for so long. Mum loved her wooden floors. That's why I was so scared of her discovering what had happened, and why I had to make out like I wanted the responsibility of cleaning my own room from a young age, which was not fun at all. But she'll never know. She'll never walk on her prized wooden flooring again. The removal man places the rug down in the garden and gives me a gentle pat on the shoulder, very much at arm's length, But I've got a lot of time for men who are never quite sure if it's okay to touch women, even if they mean well, so it's appreciated. I'm sorry, love, he tells me, his genuine sympathy apparent in his tone. I can't even imagine what you must be going through. Losing your mum, it must be so difficult. I'd be a mess if my mum died. Died? I repeat back to him. My mum isn't dead. I'm so sorry, I just assumed, with you being so upset. Oh no, now he looks like he feels even worse. I need to iron this out as quickly as possible. I'm not upset because she's dead. I'm upset because she's moving in with me. The man quickly withdraws his hand of support, his face shifting from confusion to something somewhere between feeling embarrassed and judging me with his eyes. I don't suppose that came out exactly as I intended it to, although I'd be lying if I said I was happy about the situation. The main reason I'm so upset to be emptying my mum's house is because it's the house I grew up in, the one I lived in until I left for uni, built on a plot that she and my dad picked out when it was nothing more than a patch of dirt. My mum has sold our childhood home to buy somewhere smaller now that it's just her, which makes sense. It's just so difficult to see the place go. As if that's not bad enough, originally, when plans were being made, I told her that she could stay with me for a night before collecting her keys to the new place the next day. Unfortunately, due to a whole mess of circumstances with the chain on her buyer's side and the new build Mum is buying not being ready due to delays, her one-night stay in December has turned into her moving in for the foreseeable, until the new year at least. For someone so used to living on her own, who has gone to great efforts to arrange herself a nice, quiet Christmas period alone in her finally finished house project, the thought of having to live with my mum again isn't something I'm jazzed about. That's her over there, I tell him, pointing my mum out over by the removal van. That's your mum? He replies in disbelief. I thought that was your sister. I sigh. I hear that all the time these days. Billie, my darling, how's it going? She asks as we approach the van. I might be feeling like crap about this entire situation, but Mum is positively glowing. She looks cold, with her coat belted up tightly and her pink cheeks. Oddly, it suits her, though. It's like the kind of healthy look I tried to achieve with blusher, only to end up looking like a clown. I doubt the weather is suiting me so well. I've only been back outside for a few minutes, and I can feel my nose trying to run, so I sniff hard. So attractive. Yeah, all good, I reply. I emptied the fridge and the freezer of the last bits. Elliot had one last stab at being the world's nosiest neighbour, but otherwise I think the place is pretty much emptied, apart from a couple of boxes. I'll go get them, the man I've been chatting to says. I think he'd do anything to get away from me now. No worries, pal. The other man, I'm assuming this is Tommy, replies. He briefly takes his eyes off my mum and turns to me. As we make eye contact, there's a shared look of recognition between us. We know each other. He's Tom Paulson? I say, my voice shooting up at the end because I can't be certain. Yeah, he replies, his smile growing as he realises where he knows me from. Billie May, right? I remember you. My mum looks at me expectantly, her curiosity clearly getting the better of her as she waits for an introduction. Mum, do you remember Tom from my class at primary school? I ask her. I went to secondary school with him too, but I was too old and too cool to have my mum taking me to school then, obviously. Still, I remember him. He somehow looks so different, but also not really that different at all. He looks like I remember his dad looking. He was a policeman who dropped by the school when we were in year 2 or 3 to give us a talk on stranger danger. I don't waste time wondering whether or not I look as much like my mum. I know that I don't. Your mum, Tom says in disbelief as his jaw heads for the floor. This is never your mum. I can't believe it. Believe it, I practically beg. This happens all the time now, and while I'm happy for my mum, I still don't find it easy. I would have noticed a MILF like you at the school gates. Tom tells her with a wiggle of his eyebrows. My mum, visibly delighted to be referred to as a MILF, laughs and bats her hand. Oh yeah, I remember you being such a charismatic 9-year-old, I reply sarcastically. Didn't you pee your pants during sports day? Tom frowns. He turns back to my mum. So is Mr. May still on the scene? He asks curiously. Gross. Sadly not, my mum replies, with a tone and a look that implies she is anything but sad about it. My dad left my mum, and me and Jess in the process, years ago when I was barely a teenager. He fell in love and styled out leaving us as this bold, romantic thing, as though that's going to mean anything to a couple of kids staring down the barrel of occasional evenings and every other weekend, which we only did for as long as we absolutely had to. He thought he was heroic, following his heart, leaving his marriage for true love. Of course, in a not-so-shocking turn of events, it turns out the woman who he was seeing behind his wife's back wasn't his true love. Anyway, things may not have turned out so well for my dad, but my mum never let herself become a casualty of divorce. Divorce, it turns out, looks great on her. Or divorce settlements do, at least. My mum didn't just wash that man out of her hair, and she didn't waste any time scratching his face out of photos of the two of them. My mum had a series of cosmetic surgeries that made her look so different it effectively scrubbed the old her from the photos instead. I'll never know the full extent of the work she had done. She didn't even tell me and Jess on the day when she had the bulk of the heavy lifting done until she was back home again. But she's in great shape. Her skin looks like there's an Instagram filter over it. I cringe to even admit it, but her boob age is way younger than mine now. The new Kate May looks incredible. She's happy. She really is living her best life. Don't get me wrong, I am happy for her. It's just massively uncomfortable for me when things like this happen. I never would have guessed Mum would be the type to have work done. She certainly never used to be. But my dad left a massive hole in her life when he broke her heart. I think their relationship had become such a big part of her identity, all she wanted to do was reinvent herself. She certainly achieved it. And good for her. Tom begrudgingly turns his attention back to me. I can't help but sigh, not that he notices, because somehow my mum looking so good makes me feel like I look crap in comparison. I know we're apples and oranges, and more than anything, I think it's the fact that my mum defies her age that fascinates people, but it's hard not to feel unremarkable in her shadow. Not that it's her fault, and not that I begrudge her it, after wasting all those years with my dad. Actually, it's weird. I was talking about you the other day. Someone at football said you'd moved in with Declan Clancy. Mad that anyone could still be with their year 11 boyfriend or girlfriend, innit? Tom looks to my mum. There's a car driving past, so she takes this opportunity to look away for a moment, leaving me alone in my awkward moment. Well, we weren't together the whole time, I explain, and, we're not together now, actually. I probably should have opened with that, but I still find it so uncomfortable to talk about. I don't even like to admit it to myself because it sets me going down a path where I question everything, until I stop being overly critical of myself, and that's no way to live. Declan was Declan's problem, not me. Tom's cheeks flush. Sorry, Billy love, I was sure one of the lads said you'd bought a house together recently, he says sincerely. Oh no, we did, I reply. I pull a sort of playfully irritated face as though I'm talking about some minor inconvenience. We bought a fixer-upper together just over a year ago, and then he pissed off and left me with it, so that was fun. Awkward part over, my mum rejoins the conversation, seeing her opportunity to help diffuse things. Her house is stunning now, she gushes, just phenomenal, and she did it all by herself. Well, mostly, I reply. I still needed electricians and plumbers and carpenters. Oh my, Mum jokes. Tom practically melts. He's so charmed by her. I get it, though, because while she may have transformed herself into this blonde bombshell who doesn't look a day over 30, She's still the same sweet, caring, mumsy mum on the inside, and there's a great comfort in a personality like that. "You really have done such a fantastic job, my darling," Mum says, wrapping an arm around me. "It's going to be so wonderful, the two of us living together." "You two are going to be living together?" Tom asks curiously. He has a cheeky glint in his eye. I'm not quite sure why. Perhaps he's imagining us having sleepover parties, painting our nails, and talking about boys. That may not be that far off the mark. "Yes," Mum beams. "We're going to be each other's wing woman and have such a magical Christmas in her beautiful home. Oh, you really should see it." "I'd love to," Tom replies quickly. "Oh, shit. Did you hear that?" I interrupt. Is that your friend calling for help? He sounds hurt." "Back in a minute," Tom announces heroically as he dutifully dashes inside. "I didn't hear anything," Mum says with a casual shrug as she smooths out her coat. "That's because I made it up," I insist plainly. "Stop flirting with the movers." Mum laughs. "You're such a grump," she teases. "I am not flirting with the movers. I'm just proud of what you've done with your lovely home. Everyone needs to see it. When did you get so uptight?" "Sometime around all the stuff we just talked about," I reply, stating the obvious. "Please don't invite random men over, Mum. I don't care if that makes me seem uptight." She wraps an arm around me and pulls me close for a half hug. "I'm just proud of you and what you've done, and all without a bloody man," she tells me. "I just want everyone to see." I smile. "Well, I'm proud of you too," I tell her. Even if living with Mum for a while is going to drive me slightly crazy, I love her to bits, and we do have a great relationship. "We're better off without men," I insist, just as Tom arrives back. His face falls, like I've just told him there's no Santa Claus. "We really are," she eventually replies. "A man-free Christmas is just what we need." Mum is absolutely right about a man-free Christmas being a good idea, but my plans were about so much more than that. Still, it will be nice to have some company. A break from living alone might be good. It's just not the Christmas period I had in mind. "So what time shall I come over?" Tom asks her quietly, but not so quietly I don't hear. Mum looks over at me expectantly, like a kid asking if their friend can come over for dinner after school. I, without a doubt, without even trying in fact, can manage a man-free Christmas. I don't think my mum can, though, and that definitely isn't on my Christmas list. Chapter 2. There's something about the last day of term that makes everyone a little crazy. One of the great things about teaching in a private school is that we finish for Christmas much earlier than most schools. Still, we do all down tools the day before the last day of term, so today is just about having fun, allowing the children to celebrate together and swap presents before going off to their country mansions or winter sun holidays. I'm an English teacher at Portia School, one of the top private schools in Canterbury. I do really enjoy it, but at a certain point, teenagers are just teenagers, and, to put it plainly, you can get them to give a shit about Othello or you can't. It's funny because we all remember what it was like at school, anticipating the holidays, looking forward to those weeks off. As a teacher, I still feel that way. I can't wait because, for the first time since I bought the house, it will be the first holiday I have with it finally finished. I can actually enjoy it. No tradespeople, no painting, no eating beans so that I can pay the electrician. The staff room at Portia is more like a trendy cafe meets a wag's living room. You know when you see influencer houses on Instagram and they're just a swatch of shades of grey? That's what this room is like. I suppose it's supposed to look high-end and classy, but there's something kind of cold about it. Almost clinical, too. It's so clean you're almost scared to eat your lunch here. The staff room does have its perks, though. There's a coffee machine that would put a Starbucks to shame, which I get a lot of use out of, and the different seating zones make it a great space for working or relaxing, either alone or with other members of staff. Speaking of which, Angie, my best friend, is sitting on one of the sofas with 2 gigantic chocolate muffins in front of her. Angie is a maths teacher, and it's funny because we both think the other person has the harder job. The thought of tackling trigonometry makes me feel physically sick. I want to say that after my GCSEs, I dumped it from my mind, but I would be lying if I said I ever felt like I had an understanding of it in the first place. The kids here definitely know more about maths than I remember. Angie, on the other hand, is intimidated by all things English. Anything much more than a casual message, and she will often run it by me before she sends it. I often point out to her that English must be easier because even the text box where she composes messages can check her spelling and grammar, which she will counter with the existence of calculators. But I still wouldn't know how to do trigonometry, even with a calculator, so I think that settles it. I got you this, she tells me, pushing one of the muffins my way as I take a seat next to her. Chocolate, orange and cranberry. That's another great thing about working here. When it comes to Christmas, they go hard. Festive menus, multiple Christmas trees, decorations everywhere you turn. You angel, thank you, I reply. I need it today. Had enough of the festive fun? She asks through a knowing smile. Why is it that work is so much harder and drags on for so much longer when you're not doing any actual work? No one is interested in playing games, I say with a sigh as I slump back in my seat. They're running out the clock the same way we are. Half of them are just sitting, chatting, messing around on their phones. The other half are dancing for TikTok. I'm politely declining their invitations to join in. You would almost certainly go viral, Angie says through a snort, with your crap dad at a wedding dance moves. I can't even be mad at you for saying that, I reply. This muffin has more sense of rhythm and grace. And yet you're an amazing skier, Angie says, leaning back next to me. I feel her body tense up as she realises she has potentially put her foot in it. Shit, sorry, she says quickly. I'm not trying to remind you of it or try to convince you to come with us, but are you sure you won't come with us? Just before last Christmas, before Declan walked out on me, we booked a Christmas skiing holiday with Angie and her husband Bill and our other couple friends, Ari and Brian and Anne and Jules. I shake my head. I've got Mum with me now, I remind her. I don't fancy leaving her home alone in my house. Angie laughs. Are you sure? She asks again. Initially, when Declan and I broke up, I couldn't think of anything worse than still going on a cosy couples holiday, being the only one who was single. I know it's not my friend's fault, and no one ever tries to make me feel bad for being single. In fact, they work overtime to make me feel better about it, and ensure that I know how much better I am without Declan. But inevitably, it would have been a problem sooner or later. Whether it was sharing ski lifts or playing board games where you're in teams of 2, my single status would have made things slightly off. You're our friend, not Declan. He's not coming, but you still could, she persists. It won't be the same without you. And if the whole squad is away all Christmas... I know you think I'm making this up, but I promise you it's true, I insist. I really am looking forward to a nice, quiet Christmas, mostly alone in my newly completed house. I've cleared my calendar. I don't have any work, no social obligations of any description. Mum is a surprise, but I'm sure she'll behave. Honestly, it's going to be great. I'm just going to relax and appreciate all my hard work. Well, you've certainly earned it, Angie insists, but it won't be the same without you. Declan, on the other hand, would have made the whole thing less fun. His chaotic energy was exhausting. I wonder what he's doing now. Surely he can't last long without someone to sponge off. I'll bet you anything he still doesn't have a job. I smile. You've got to love a supportive friend who will badmouth your ex forever. Declan was chaotic, she's right. I mean, the proof is in the breakup. Talking me into buying a fixer-upper, putting all my cash into it, getting a big fat mortgage, and then abandoning me with the lot. We haven't interacted in months now. He's vanished. At first I was worried sick, terrified that something horrible might have happened to him. These days, for his sake, He would be better off if something horrible had happened to him, because if I ever see him again... I'm the mug who spent years propping him up, while he was trying to make a living as an artist or a writer or whatever his latest creative whim was. I think one of our last arguments was about him wanting to buy a double bass. After the initial shock of him abandoning me wore off, honestly, all I felt was relief. We may have bought the house together, but I am so much happier living in it alone. It would have been so easy to stay with Declan forever. Well, not easy. He was actually quite difficult to live with, but you know what I mean. When you're with a person for a long time, it's hard to make a change. Being alone has allowed me to create a space that is me through and through, and I couldn't be happier with it. Would it be nice to have a boyfriend? Well, yeah, in theory. I miss the idea of a boyfriend, someone to hang out with, cuddle up to when it's cold, go on holidays with, take to family parties and friends' weddings. I don't miss Declan, though. Not now that I can see what my life is like without him versus what it was like when I was with him. I'll be honest, it does sound lovely, having the house mostly to yourself, having no obligations, no work or housework. Angie enthuses. Just think, you can get home this evening, jump into your pyjamas and leave them on until next year if you feel like it. That's the plan, I reply with a smile. Although I'll probably dress for a shopping trip here and there. Otherwise, it's a home alone Christmas for me. Well, with my mum, of course. You'll probably enjoy having her around, Angie says. She's a fun mum. She's not like my mum. I love your mum, I insist. I love my mum too, but you've got to admit, she's an old bag compared to yours, Angie jokes. She's snooty and narrow-minded. The only thing she enjoys more than knitting is scowling and judging people. Your mum feels more like a cool older sister. Never tell my mum that, I say, with a playful seriousness, but also I really hope she never tells her that. I commented it on one of her Instagram photos last week, Angie admits through a giggle. She was over the moon. I bet she was, I laugh. When we were emptying her house, she was chatting with one of the removal men, and she told him she was my wing woman, or that I was going to be hers. Either way, imagine going out on the pool with your mum, and it's not just that she's my mum, it's also the fact that we really could pass for sisters. It's great that she looks younger than her age and that she's so happy, but inviting that comparison somehow ages me up. Oi, you are gorgeous, Angie insists. You look like Florence Pugh's only slightly older sister. People would kill for that long blonde hair, and your face always looks so fresh. Me and my black hair dye are losing the battle against my greys, and I've got a face like I've always just been given bad news. I snort. You have maybe 3 grey hairs because you can't be asked dyeing them and you can't even see them, and even if you could, grey hair is cool, I remind her. And your permanent expression is a sort of cool but warm kind of thing. Cool but warm, she repeats back to me with a teasing smile. And you're an English teacher, yeah? I mean, you look cool, like you don't need to give a damn, but you also still look so warm and friendly and approachable. I'm trying to pay you a compliment, I remind her. I place my hands over my cheeks. I have chubby cheeks and over-processed hair. My goodness, it's no wonder our young ladies have self-esteem issues if you two are shaping their minds. Fee, one of the more senior teachers, interrupts us, having blatantly been eavesdropping on our conversation. My girls have more confidence than me, I point out. One of them reminded me that her car, which she can't even legally drive yet, was worth more than mine. Another gave me her mum's surgeon's Instagram username. It still keeps me up at night, wondering which part she thinks I need fixing. Your bum, Angie teases, causing Fee to cringe at her use of the word bum. Fee, hilariously, is head of pastoral care. If you asked her what this involved, she would probably brag a few extra $1,000 a year. You've got to feel sorry for them, with Fee in charge of their well-being, because I feel like kids today have so much more to contend with than I did when I was at school. I don't want to sound like I'm 1,000 years old, but we didn't have social media, which must have made all the difference. I would say we didn't have influencers, but we did, in a sense. I remember watching The Simple Life and being obsessed with Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie. I loved everything about them, from their style to their dogs to their confidence. Looking back, it's easy to see that they probably weren't the best role models, at least not with the way that they portrayed themselves in the show. Of course, all this manifested as was me cutting the top section of my jeans to be lower and begging my mum to let me have a chihuahua. Nothing like cosmetic surgery and sports cars. The toughest thing about Fee being head of pastoral care is that she isn't only out of touch with youth, she's out of touch with the times too. Issues like sexuality and gender are pretty black and white to her, which means the rest of us have to work overtime to support the kids. It's pretty much known throughout the school that you don't talk to Fee about things like that. "Clocked off for Christmas already?" Fee asks. Pretty ironic, given how I was just thinking about how little she does for her wage. "Not quite yet," I reply through a forced smile. "We're going to our Patricia's for the Christmas period," she tells us. "She's just had another baby, you know." Oh, we all know. It's almost all she talks about. "Nice," I say simply. "She's a year or so younger than you two, you know," she points out. "You know" ought to be her catchphrase. "Good for her," Angie replies. "You two ought to start thinking about having kids," she tells us. "Together?" I blurt, purposefully misunderstanding her point. "Oh my God, we'd make such cute mums together," Angie sings. "Imagine how cute our baby would be." "Cute and a genius," I point out, "with my words and your numbers." That's not what I mean," Fee interrupts, clearly not amused. "We've already got 50 kids between us," I remind her. "So long as you're happy," she says with a shrug. "If you're happy with your lot." "Oh, look at the time," I say, probably looking at my watch a little slower than my words come out. "We need to go get set up. Our classes are doing a TikTok thing together." I say this, knowing full well that as little as saying the word TikTok gives Fee a headache. "Oh, for goodness sake," she replies. "I shall be encouraging mine to revise." "Well, good luck," I tell her as I stand up. "And if we don't see you, have a lovely Christmas." "Yes, and give our love to Patricia and the baby," Angie adds politely. Once we're out in the corridor, away from prying ears, Angie hooks her arm with mine. "Have you seen photos of Patricia's baby?" she asks. "It looks like an egg with blusher on." I laugh. "You're going to have to start talking more maternal than that if you expect me to have a baby with you," I point out. "And you'll have to get Bill on board." "Well, if I know Bill, and I like to think I do, given that I married him, I can say with confidence that the idea of the two of us trying for a baby is something he wouldn't object to," she jokes. I snort. That one caught me off guard. "Oh my God, Angie!" "Seriously, that man's browser history would have made Hugh Hefner blush," she adds. "Another perk of not having to live with a man. There you go." "It's starting to seem like a long list," I say with a smile. "Thanks." "Are you sure you won't come on a holiday with us?" Angie says again. "It really isn't too late. There's room in the lodge. I'll even share a room with you. Bill can have ours. Again, he'll be delighted." I laugh. "Thanks for being such a brilliant friend," I tell her, squeezing her arm, "but honestly, I've never been more excited to have a clear calendar and an almost empty house." "Well, okay then," she replies. "Perhaps we can have a girls' weekend away in the new year?" "I'd love that," I said with a smile. "Ooh, you don't still use Matcha, do you?" Angie asks enthusiastically. I pull a face. "I think I still have it on my phone, but I have to be feeling pretty existential to venture onto dating apps," I reply. "Sometimes I get a notification, but not from a person, from the app trying to encourage me to use it. I usually log in, start up a couple of conversations, someone first says something that reminds me why I'm much happier being single, and then I close it again. You know Katrin, my classroom assistant, she's obsessed with dating apps to the point where I can't imagine her ever having a boyfriend because she enjoys the process too much. Anyway, she was telling me about this thing they're doing for the festive period where users submit events and it creates this calendar of stuff for singles to do. So if you get really bored with us all being away, perhaps you could give that a go." "I don't think I'm that desperate yet," I reply through a chuckle. "That sounds like a nightmare." "Yeah, I suppose you're right," she replies. I know it might seem sad, but honestly, I am genuinely looking forward to a nice, quiet Christmas in my finished house, just relaxing and appreciating all my hard work. And Angie is right. I probably will enjoy having my mum around, so long as she doesn't actually expect me to go out on the pool with her. I just need to get through this last afternoon, and then quiet Christmas can begin. Perhaps my luck is finally about to change. It may not be the Christmas I thought I was going to be having until recently, but I honestly can't wait. Just me, Mum, and the house. No men needed. Let's just hope she agrees. Chapter 3. It's bloody freezing out this evening, so I only stand on my driveway admiring my house for a moment. I remember the first time Declan and I viewed the place, standing out here, gazing up at it. I couldn't get over how wide it was. It seemed massive. Even if it was a tired, ugly red brick thing, I could see the potential in it. It doesn't even resemble its former self now, since I've had the garden landscaped, fitted with contemporary lighting, and having the house rendered and painted white has made all the difference. What stands before me now is a sleek, modern house, something I never would have been able to afford had I bought it already renovated. It took years of saving, the money my granddad left me when he died, and a lot of hard work, but I finally feel like now I have my dream house. The light from inside beams through the white wooden Venetian blinds I have in all the windows. The warm glow spills out into the garden, dragging me inside. I have to admit, it is nice coming home from work on a cold, dark evening to be greeted by a house with someone in it, with the lights shining, the heating on, and now that I'm inside, the smell of something cooking filling my nostrils. Perhaps I could get used to this. Inside the hallway, I have a large floor-to-ceiling mirror with a shelf that sits halfway across it. I drop my key in the jar and take my coat and shoes off before placing them in the cupboard. I never used to be so organised and tidy. In the flat I was living in before, I felt like I was always in a mess. I always seemed to have a wardrobe on the go, where I would pick up and drop off clothes in a hurry on a morning and an evening, and I would let dishes pile up in the sink sometimes. But in my defence, we didn't have a dishwasher, and you forget just how big a part of your day washing dishes actually takes, although that could be a byproduct of letting them pile up first. Declan never really did much about the place, even though he had lots of free time, which was infuriating. I try not to read too much into things, although I so often do anyway, but in hindsight, his general attitude, lack of care and attention, and unwillingness to work as a team with me should have signposted the fact that he was going to abandon me. It was hard at first, moving into a project of a house like this one on my own, but I decided to start as I meant to go on, to get everything absolutely perfect and then work overtime to keep it that way. It's actually quite easy to keep up with when you have pride in what you've done and you can feel the benefit of keeping the place tidy. I clean up as I go along. I have all the gadgets and potions recommended to me by cleanfluencers, and I have a place for everything. One of the best things about renovating this house from scratch is that I've been able to create spaces for everything, inside and out, to better organise my day-to-day life. Do I think that in suddenly losing my relationship and not having much else going on, I have potentially gone all in on house stuff, making it my entire personality, the thing that I focus on? Yes, probably, but it's given me something to throw myself into over the last year, something to care about. And I feel like I'm good at it. I have a well-organised pantry, colour-coded cleaning